Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Ropes, where we are so delighted to have you join us. Laurie, my co-host, I'm very pleased to be here with you today. How are you doing?
Likewise, great to be with you. Been a little bit going on in the boxing world recently, isn't it?
Yeah, there sure has. Let's get
It's
into
the gift
it.
that keeps giving. That's what I call boxing.
It's a really crazy sport because it feels like so much happens so quickly that oftentimes when things are taking place throughout the week, I'm like chomping at the bit to come back to the studio so I can dissect it all with you. And the topic that we want to get into today specifically is the big news that broke on Friday night, which was CONOR BENN moving over to Zuffa Boxing, signing with Dana White. And it absolutely took the boxing world by storm. I mean, it's been, more than 72 hours, and we haven't really recovered from it. But there's been further developments, and I really want to discuss them with you. So I think starting off, let's talk about the deal itself, or rather the move itself. People have had lots of mixed reactions. When the news first broke, I jumped online straight away to kind of just say, wow, shock.
I saw that. Shout out to you, because I remember when I got the news, I was traveling back from the gym, my phone started blowing up, and there was all these things, and I did a little sneaky one. Every time I stopped at the traffic lights, took up my phone, saw more. I was like, wow. And then I get in, and then I saw you'd already done a video on it. So shout out to you.
Thank you.
You was ahead of things. Well done.
Yeah, only because I was situated at home and I could talk about it. I mean, if I'd been out, then it would have been game over. But obviously, there's been lots of mixed reactions. A lot of the boxing world have immediately reacted and kind of felt that CONOR BENN has betrayed Eddie Hearn and have called it snaky behaviours. Others have kind of vocalised that, he's got one career, he needs to do what's best for him. I saw your video. Right. I also shared it with lots of people. Guys, if you haven't seen it, go to LL Sports TV and check it out. It provided lots of context. It was very informative. Your opinion at the time was obviously, and I think it's still your opinion today, which is that he's done nothing wrong. He's made the move that's best for his career. And yeah, that was sort of your opinion. Give us a little bit more.
Yeah, so listen, obviously I box myself and I'm aware of these things. I've got a lot of friends that are either current boxers or ex-boxers, and they've told me stories. Listen, the amount, you've heard them, listen, you know what this is a very dirty business. I love boxing, but sometimes boxing doesn't love us back. There's so many stories I could tell you about fighters getting ripped off, all sorts of shenanigans going on, things that would make your hair curl, honestly. So I'm very much of the thinking that the power dynamic in boxing has always been towards the promoters and the managers. Very often the fighters get screwed, and this is a very dangerous sport. You're literally one punch away from serious ill health, career ending, even further than that. You know what I'm saying? The evidence is out there. You only got to chat to ex-boxers and you can see the damage that they go through. That being said, so you have an obligation as a boxer, professional boxer, to try and get the best deal, secure the best deal for you and your family and your career, because you only get one career. Okay, you can talk about people coming back, making comebacks, but you know what I'm saying.
Generally speaking, yeah.
So when I heard about this stuff, and then when I saw what CONOR BENN was being offered, basically 15 million for one fight, and at the end of it, he becomes a free agent, I'm like, bro, who wouldn't take that? Like, you know what I mean? And then I started to dig a bit deeper, and then I saw that his contract is due for renewal in June, which means he's not been tied down to a deal. So it's not like he's reneging on his contract. He's not broken any terms of the contract. Now, everyone's going on about the betrayal and the lack of a phone call to Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn had stood by him all this time. Listen, I get that. He should really have contacted Eddie Hearn and said, look, you've done a lot for me, but this is under strong consideration by myself and my team, because this is simply an offer I can't refuse. That conversation should definitely have taken place. But then at the same time, knowing what I know about business deals and stuff like that, I've got a few friends and family who are into business deals. And when I spoke it over with them, they've said to me things like, well, sometimes when situations like this occur, it's best not to speak to the person concerned, because it can get messy and it can get, it's best to just, if you're convinced that that's what you want to do, you let the person know, which CONOR BENN did via email. I know it's not
his lawyer,
his lawyer, because it's a business deal, right? So you do that, and then you have that conversation later on. But in terms of him taking the other deal, 100% is in the right. And all these boxers, ex-boxers and current boxers, they're being disingenuous because I'm telling you now, Melissa, 99 out of 100, maybe 100 out of 100, if they was in that exact same position, they would have done the exact same thing.
Okay, so I, by and large, agree with everything that you've said. And I think that I also believe that if Eddie Hearn himself was a pro boxer and he was put in that position, he would also take the deal. And the reason I say that is because if we look just back to December when the world was giving AJ grief for taking the deal with to fight Jake Paul for 50 to 70 million, Eddie Hearn was front of the queue saying, you would take the same deal. The money talks, bullshit walks, all of that kind of stuff. And he backed it when everyone else was like, what about the legacy? What about this? So if anyone understands how important taking those business deals are, it's Eddie Hearn. He is a businessman and he's a bloody good one at that. So I think
well, not so good in this case because he let Conor Benn's contract run down and he allowed his arch rival, Dana White, a man who he'd been going back and forth with, to steal Conor Benn from under his nose. That doesn't sound like great businessman to me.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. I mean, he definitely. I mean, he's a human. He had a blind spot in this case. But let's talk a little bit about that blind spot because I think that this is where it gets interesting, right? You know, if we're talking about it from like a business perspective, and this was just a strictly business relationship, cool, I'm with you. But the fact that Eddie Hearn stood by Conor Benn when he was going through the egg controversy. You know, the failed drugs test, and he stood by him, he backed him 100%, I think adds insult to injury. It's a bit like salt in the wound, isn't it? Then you've got the likes of Frank Smith, Barry Hearn coming on to TalkSport explaining how actually it was much tighter than a business relationship. They went on holidays together. They were there, they were like two peas in a pod, they were. You kind of link the two together. And it's very nuanced, isn't it? Because obviously Conor Benn has made essentially a career out of becoming commercially viable. He was already commercially viable, but he's really expanded that profile. And Eddie was right beside him doing all of those things with him and for him.
Oh, but you lent him money though, Melissa.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've heard about this money.
Did you get the money back, Eddie, by the way? I think you did, because otherwise, if you didn't, I'm sure you'd be telling the world, oh, I didn't get my money back. Listen.
But I think the point being, sorry to...
Karen.
I think the point being is that... No, it's fine. So I think the point being is that, you know, he was making the case that actually I've really supported this guy through thick and thin. And I think... Personally, I agree that Conor should have taken the deal because you only have one career. You're risking your life when you're going in the ring, as you rightly said. It's a one-fight deal. But I think the way he handled it could have been handled with a bit more sensitivity.
Yeah, I agree. He could have handled it better. But like I said, I honestly think that there was somebody chirping in the background, maybe his lawyers, and saying, look, don't ring Eddie because it's going to get messy. In fact, I've seen a short of an interview that Conor Benn gave where he said that he chose not to ring Eddie at the time because he felt that the conversation could have got left and they would have said things that they both would have regretted. So he felt it more appropriate to have the lawyers do it, which is why he found out by email. But to go back to the drugs thing, let's talk about that for a minute, right? Because I've got a view on this. Listen, at the time when Eddie was going all in for Conor Benn and doing all this, let's be honest, capping, because I can remember the time, Melissa, when Eddie Hearn was supposed to be this very stringent anti-drugs, anti-peds. He was talking about drugs should be banned from boxing per se. And then the Conor Benn thing happened and he said he stood by him because he believed in him. Listen, at the time, a lot of people, myself included, looked at that and thought, you've been a man previously that's been very vocal, being anti-drugs. This guy's been caught. And he's not really got a salient defence other than the egg stuff, which, come on, everybody just whatever. And you went out there and battled for this man. Were you doing it because you were already looking at the back end? Thinking, because let's be honest, if you look to that stable, the Matchroom stable in this country in particular, because I know Eddie signed fighters from across the world, but there were two viable commercial entities in that Matchroom stable. AJ, who's coming to the end of his career, who was the other one? Conor Benn. So I would argue, many people would argue that yes, you did your thing, you stood up for him, but you never did that in isolation. You knew that you was protecting an asset.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he obviously was like, there is an investment to be made in this young kid. Yeah. It's Nigel Benn's son. He's got a mouth on him. of the UK circuit, there's not a lot of them that have that kind of mouth on them, right? And that's the kind of thing that sells fights and so on and so forth. And we've seen how that's it progressed to today, where Conor Benn is in the States. You know, he's recognised over stateside. Over here, he's a superstar. He's got that blonde hair on his head now. It's all kicking off, isn't
bombshell.
it? Yeah, bombshell. Don't take that name from every British. But yeah,
he rode out for him, Melissa. But I don't know. Maybe it's me being a bit churlish. But even at the time, a lot of people were like, "Yeah, you're doing all that, Eddie, but do you really believe that he was innocent?" Because some of the statements that you'd made on the record previously, you had claimed to be vociferously anti-drugs. And this is a guy that was caught twice. And you're out there defending him. And a lot of people looked into it and thought, is this sincere? Because, you know what I mean? The optics just didn't seem to align.
Yeah, but listen, I think that ultimately anything that people do in big business, particularly in boxing, is always business motivated. I don't like this narrative of like, you know, he rode out for him out of the goodness of his heart, because maybe he did as well. I'm not saying that he didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart to some degree, but there was also a business, you know, if for example, you know, he was looking at it thinking this kid's never going to recover from this, I can't imagine that he would do it so publicly. I could be wrong, but I can't imagine. Either way,
that he was a little bit at odds with the statements he'd made on PEDs in boxing previously.
Yeah, but you know, Laurie, come on, like, you know, promoters typically,
and that's what I'm saying.
But promoters typically go back and forth on the things that they say, because their whole thing is to promote the fight or the fighter. The same way that at the time when AJ signed the deal with Jake Paul, it was all like, you would all sign, sorry, I shouldn't do an impression. You would all sign the deal.
Exactly.
You know, you would all accept that type of money. And now, you know, there seems to be some type of question mark over it. Either way, I want to actually talk about another lens of it, which is that it's the fact that Conor's signed with Dana White, right? And now Dana White is a guy who's totally monopolized MMA. He's got the UFC. That's his brand. It's very lateral management. Like, he's just the one guy. He's the UFC. And I distinctly remember times when, you know, Eddie would speak really highly of Dana and everything he's done with UFC. He even went to one of his shows, sat there ringside. I think he spoke publicly saying, we've got a lot to learn. I mean, maybe he didn't put it in that way, but we got the impression that he respected the business model of the UFC. Now Dana's come into boxing with Zuffa boxing, which everyone kind of had their eyebrow raised at the time about. He said when he first came into boxing that by the end of the year, we're going to shake things up. And everyone was like, will you? Next thing you know, signed Jai Opetaia, taken Conor Benn from Eddie Hearn, and he's gone publicly on the record and said it's like playing with babies. Yeah. And he said in a post-fight interview, is there a bigger pussy than Eddie Hearn?
I think that's a good question. But all jokes aside, listen, I'm so glad you made that point, because it's an excellent point. I mean, beforehand, him and Dana White seem to be showing each other a lot of respect. The minute Dana gets into boxing, it shifted, and now they're at loggerheads. And what was interesting about last week, when they were really going back and forth, is that obviously Dana White would have known that this news was about to break. So he said a couple of really derogatory things about Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn has also criticised Zuffa's show so far. A couple of hundred people watching. It's one of the worst shows ever. And then for Dana White to basically pull Eddie Hearn's pants down with the signing of Conor Benn like that, that's part of the whole humiliation that Eddie Hearn's feeling about this. And listen.
And I would feel the same. I'd feel humiliated too, honestly. Like, I would feel. Yeah.
Yeah, one of your arch rivals has done that to you. But then, again, you can't feel sorry for Eddie Hearn. Remember when he signed Ben Whittaker? He was putting it on Ben Shalom. Oh, look, I've signed your best fighter. Oh, he's come to us because we can do better for him than you did. Listen, it's all swings and roundabouts, man, at the end of the day. And one thing I would want to say as well is that you can sometimes tell the character of a person when things like this happen. So the deal's announced, Eddie Hearn's interviewed. The first thing he says, or amongst the first thing he said, is, I lent him money. Now, when I heard that, Melissa, I'm like, what? You are actually exposing yourself now, Eddie Hearn, because if you have a friend and you fall out, I'd like to think, Melissa, the first thing you're not going to do is
bad
start
mouth
talking
them,
about how much money I lent them, what I did for them, blah, blah, blah.
Or just badmouth them publicly, right?
Say what you got to say about him leaving you and not the phone call and all that stuff, fine. But when you do that, I'm starting to think, you know what, you're not a nice person. You're not the person you're projecting yourself to be.
Well, it's interesting because I think that since the news broke, you know, Eddie has sort of publicly been talking about, yes, the lending of the money, but he has also said, you know, like, I'm fine. You know, he said in an interview that people keep checking on him, being like, you know, this is such devastating news, which I'm sure it is for him. But you've also had like Barry Hearn on TalkSport saying like, this is outrageous, never saw it coming. Frank Smith saying like, I always knew he had a bit of a shady streak in his character. So there's just a lot of like information. I think, you know, to give the guys at Matchroom some grace, like, I'm sure they're processing something that's a big loss to them. You know, and it's good. It's going to feel very personal because I think it was a very personal relationship. But I think that the additional layer is that, you know, someone that you formerly looked up to, even if maybe that's not the way you would phrase it, Dana White has come into boxing and now he's trying to shake things up. He's doing that with the backing of Turki Al-Sheikh. And I was watching Ade and G-Man's back and forth earlier, and they were saying that on the fight poster that Conor Benn was announced, they had the Riyadh season logo.
Right.
So he's fighting on as part of Riyadh season. Yeah. And there was this other conversation about they were having, which, you know, to kind of recalibrate what they said, that they've heard whisperings and talks of Zuffa Boxing being in conversation with Sky Sports and Conor Benn potentially fighting under the Sky Sports banner with Zuffa for this one fight deal over in the UK. Now, I've seen that Zuffa has been in conversations with the British Board of Boxing to kind of sanction their fights. So when Dana White said he's come to boxing to shake things up, and within a year, we're all going to be stumped by it, it's been a few months. I'm feeling very stumped.
I'm sure Eddie Hearn is as well. Listen, you got to hand it to Dana White. At the moment, it's 1-0 to him.
It
is.
It is.
Blinder.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what's upset Eddie Hearn as well. I don't think it's just the fact that Conor Benn has signed with somebody else. The fact that he signed with Dana, a guy he'd been going back and forth with, and Dana was making all those derogatory statements about him, and now your prized asset. I mean, Matchroom in the UK have, as I said before, 2 prized assets. AJ, who's in the final straight of his career, and Conor Benn was the one that they were looking to project. And for him to leave and sign with Dana, that was not just humiliating, but that is a major loss.
It's a major loss. It's a major loss. And, you know, speaking of Conor Benn and the next steps for him, obviously, he's spoken about wanting the WBC title. Ryan Garcia just won it over the weekend in dominating fashion over Mario Barrios. So that is a potential future fight for him. You got Ryan Garcia calling out Shakur Stevenson. Teofimo Lopez has said he's going to go up to welterweight. So that is starting to look real juicy. And how that plays out and what Zuffa wants to do with all of that is really interesting. And I'm intrigued to see how it develops.
Absolutely. And we spoke on a previous show we did about whatever you say about Conor Benn, he does have a skill for self-promotion. We saw the way he went over to the America, dyed his hair blonde, turning up at every event leading up to that Shakur Stevenson fight, getting in the press conferences, weigh-ins. He always had something to say. He was always in front of the camera. To be fair to the man, he's boosting himself up in a way that his actual boxing talent doesn't really align with. But fair play to him, he's put himself out there. This situation as well, by the way, will even create more headlines.
Yes,
around.
absolutely. And I think maybe deep down, because he knows he must be looking at that division thinking like he can't legitimately beat anyone in that division, right?
Well, I'm sure he's convinced himself that he has, but I've got to say, speaking objectively, for me, he doesn't beat any of those guys that you mentioned. I mean, like I said, we're talking about a guy that's not even won an area title.
Exactly.
His best win is against a weight-drained, over-the-hill Chris Eubank. And listen, I gave him props for the win. He deserved props for the win because he went up a couple of weights. But let's be honest, man, his resume compared to those guys over there, it doesn't even begin to compare. No. But he's in that, in terms of fights, he's right there.
He's in the conversation.
Yeah,
he's at the peak of his career, you know. I will say this, though, and this is just a close because I am conscious of time, but the hair dyeing thing really reminds me of, you know, when someone goes through a bad breakup and they're like, I need a new look. That's the vibe it's giving me. I'll probably get in trouble for saying it.
No, I hear you. It's a very good point. He's made his mark. He's made an indelible mark on the boxing scene, and fair play to him.
Absolutely. Guys, please let us know in the comments what you make of this whole saga. We'll call it Zuffa Gate.
I like that.
Let us know in the comments what you think. And thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Beyond the Ropes.